What's up everybody, I'm HoopsandHipHop and welcome back to another Pokemon Sword and Shield video. Now yesterday was just absolutely as hype as it gets with the reveal of the brand new Pokemon games and the reveal of the 8th generation of Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Yesterday I did an initial trailer analysis of the revealed trailer as well as giving my first impressions on the game, and I also have a brief update on my impressions because I said I was kind of neutral and not really feeling the starters yesterday, but they would warm up to me probably because I was kind of feeling open to the idea that I would like them. While I'm still kind of moderate on Grookey and Scorbunny, I have absolutely fallen in love with Sobble and everything it stands for. I can't believe I didn't love it from the beginning, and it just goes to show you that sometimes you gotta digest the designs of new starter Pokemon since we all expect so much from them every time around. Anyways, with that small update out of the way, in today's video we are going to be looking at all of the Easter egg secrets and just little small details that could be very easily missed from every aspect of the reveal of Pokemon Sword and Shield. We're going to be looking at the trailer once again to look at aspects that we didn't cover in yesterday's video that basically uncover specific details that might give us an inkling as to what we can expect in this game. We're also going to uncover a few very cool Easter eggs as well, and then we're also going to look at the map of the Galar region that's featuring in this game, as well as the website as well, and see what all of these different things can tell us about these upcoming titles. So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and just get right into it. Okay, so starting things off in the trailer once again, in the very first scene when we are looking out onto the grand vista of the Galar region, we are able to see a small town, and in that town there is a building that looks rather distinctive with a Pokeball on it, and given that this is past Route 1, this means that this building is likely the Pokemon laboratory for the region, because not only is it featuring very early on in the game, it's also a very distinctive building that once again has a Pokeball on it, so it's decently likely at least that this is where we're going to get our starter Pokemon in this game. It's also worth noting that since this town is past Route 1, it's possible that the laboratory does not reside in the starting town, much like in Diamond and Pearl, or similar to Sun and Moon, the player character does not actually live in the starting town and instead lives on the outskirts. We will be looking at that a little more later, but it's something to take note of. Another thing that is present all throughout this trailer but is also very easy to kind of gloss over is the fact that there are a lot of Stonehenge-like formations and ancient-looking stones laying all around the Galar region, and due to this fact and due to the fact that they're so distinctive looking, they probably have something to do with the plot of the game and the history of the region as well. The next thing in the trailer that caught my eye that doesn't really have any serious implications, I just thought it was kind of funny, is that the player character's house has both a mailbox and a mail slip on their front door. I mean, I don't really know how they do it in the UK with the whole mail system, but it kind of seems like you really only need one of those. The next thing I'm going to bring up is something I very briefly brought up in the last video yesterday, and that's the fact that the backpack of the male player character looks very unusually big and also very unusually rectangular. But if you look at it a little more closely, you can tell that it's actually a suitcase that is actually basically designed to also be a backpack, explaining its weird shape and size. I mentioned it kind of as a joke in yesterday's video, but then I got to thinking about it and realized that this could actually have some decently big implications for how player customization could possibly work in these games, because to me, this backpack looks much less like a backpack and much more like a piece of luggage that you would store your clothes in if you were going on a trip. And due to that fact, I feel like it's possible that this could signify that player customization and changing your clothes is going to be able to take place anywhere and everywhere on your journey instead of just having to go to a Pokemon Center to change clothes. Now, I have no idea if this is going to hold any weight, that's just kind of the vibe I got, but if this was the case, it would actually make the whole player customization process much more convenient in that you could change your clothes literally anywhere. Another thing about the player characters is that the player characters in particular in these games are definitely older looking. They're not super old, but they're definitely older than the regular 10 to 12-year-olds you expect, and definitely older looking than the previous Sun and Moon and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee protagonists. And usually when we have older protagonists, like in Pokemon Black and White for instance, it also means a more hardcore experience and maybe even a more hardcore story as well, so definitely something to look out for. One interesting thing about the female player character in particular is that she is actually wearing a Scottish bonnet in her default design, which further ties into the whole UK setting and is a very nice touch. Another setting later on in the trailer depicts a big purple building next to a lake, which is very likely actually the trainer school, not only because this building once again looks very distinctive, but it also has a Pokemon Battle Arena Court type thing sitting right next to it. It also seems to be placed very early on in the game, much like trainer schools are, based on the way the trailer plays out. I personally just hope it's not forced into the tutorial, and I really hope there's just not much of a tutorial at all, but that's another topic for another day. Later on in the trailer, we get this shot of an industrial city type area, and this is where we get our first sighting of a train, and trains actually make multiple appearances throughout the rest of the trailer, which is really interesting because it seems like they're going to be a focus of some type of travel throughout the region, and given that we also had a rather distinctive and mysterious train occur in Coralway Town in the Kalos region that never actually did anything or went anywhere, it'll be interesting to see if this focus on trains in the Galar region actually ends up connecting to Kalos in some way. It was also confirmed in the trailer that gyms are going to be making a triumphant return in Pokemon Sword and Shield, and we actually get to see the appearance of what gyms look like in this game. And another thing that kind of makes these gyms stand out is that on the outside of the building they actually have an icon that indicates what type that particular gym specializes in. Another thing that's worth noting here is that we can actually see a different Pokemon League/gym logo that's being used in this region in this shot compared to the one that we've come to know and love since Generation 5. Later on, we get another shot of another urban area, and once again we get to see another train, but we also get to see a poster of some Pokemon food that also features various berries that we've seen throughout the series, and it also shows the language and typography of the region, which even though we've kind of seen that thing before in games like Let's Go for instance, it's also a very nice touch in just making the region feel more alive, so I felt like it was worth mentioning. One thing I touched on in yesterday's video is that it looks like random encounters with wild Pokemon are definitely returning, but another interesting thing that looks like it could also return is a DexNav-like feature, since we see the female player character crouching around and kind of sneaking up on a Pokemon, it seems like, in the tall grass, much like the DexNav feature from Oraz. Also, another small detail here is that there's actually a split path on this route where this occurs, which might not necessarily mean anything, but it could also possibly indicate that there are more open areas in this region that allow for some exploration as opposed to one set linear path on each route. Speaking of split paths, we can also see a number of signposts at certain points in the trailer that seem to point to a number of different things in a number of different directions, so this could actually be further evidence of a more explorable, less linear region. Even further on in the trailer, we get a shot of a Lucario in an epic battle in a stadium-like setting, and if you look behind it, you can actually see what is the Game Freak logo and the words Game Freak written out in the Pokemon language. This next thing is something that was actually brought to my attention by Twintendo, so shout out to him, but there's actually something that very much looks like the Pokemon World Championships logo later on in this scene. It appears above the head of Tyranitar and shares the same general shape and colors, even though we can't see the whole thing, so it'll be interesting to see what this whole stadium scene and this whole stadium area comes to do in the final game. Also, even though it's not much of a secret, I feel like I had to mention the huge hill figure that was a prominent part of the trailer in this video. I mentioned it in the last video, but I wasn't really aware that these were a thing for some reason, but it obviously looks like this is going to play a very big part in the region and possibly even depicts a legendary Pokemon. Another fun little Easter egg that involves the stadium area is when we see the player character actually walking out into the stadium dressed up in what looks like a soccer jersey, or I guess because we're in the UK, a football jersey. The number on the back of his jersey is 227, which is actually indicative of Pokemon's birthday, February 27th, aka 227. And last but not least, at the end of the gameplay section of the trailer, we actually got a look at the Pokemon Sword and Shield logos. These logos are blue and red in coloration, and this is actually a part of a continuing fact that I've wanted to mention in a video for a long time. I just haven't got the opportunity, but this is actually a legitimate trend that goes on with all of the logos and box art of basically all the Pokemon games, where they share the initial colors that were established in the very first Pokemon games of Red and Blue. Almost every Pokemon game, aside from ones that seem to have some sort of official or unofficial connection to Generation 1, like Black and White and Gold and Silver for instance, actually use some shade of Red and Blue in their respective box art as an obvious nod to where the series started, and it's nice to see that this trend is continuing in the latest iteration of the franchise. Also, another very interesting thing to note about these logos is that they depict wolf heads on the top of the Sword and Shield, which very much seems like we're going to be having some type of wolf legendary Pokemon, just because it wouldn't make sense otherwise to depict something like this in the logo if it wasn't going to be represented by a Pokemon, but we'll just have to wait and see. After this, we were treated to the debut of the starter Pokemon of Pokemon Sword and Shield, and there's a particular interesting detail I want to mention about Scorbunny, because Scorbunny seems to have a bandage across its nose, and a bandage across your nose is a very typical or stereotypical trope, if you will, in media, and it seems like Japanese media specifically, for various fighter, warrior type characters, which could possibly indicate another firefighting starter, which I certainly don't want to have, but like I said, this is a very common trope for fighter type characters across all forms of Japanese media. On top of that, it also seems like people are pointing out that Scorbunny also has an inspiration involving soccer and or football, hence its name Scorbunny, as in not only Scorch because it's a fire type, but score as in scoring a goal. And if this is indeed the case, that it's based around soccer or football, it really only makes the fighting typing that much more believable, because I really don't know what other kind of secondary typing would fit an athlete-based Pokemon better than the fighting type, which really makes this thing, however unfortunate, even more convincing, but obviously we're just gonna have to wait and see what ends up actually happening. Okay, now we are going to move away from the trailer and focus on the map of the Galar region. This map is absolutely beautiful, and it also offers some very interesting insights into various details of the Galar region. Starting off, we can see the location of the opening scene of the trailer, and can actually see two other buildings before what would be Route 1, which is the initial scene that we saw in the trailer. One is most likely your house, but it's unknown what the other one is. But this does seem to confirm, much like Sun and Moon, that you actually live on the outskirts of a small town in this game, rather than there being an official starting town that you actually live in. Also, in what seems to be the starting town in what also seems to have the Pokemon lab that we discussed earlier, it actually looks like you're going to need to take a train to the next area of the region, as there doesn't seem to be any other type of path forward other than the rails that end up going through the mountain into the next area of the region. It's very interesting that train travel would feature this early on in the game, so it'll be very interesting to see what kind of role and what kind of level of importance this actually has in the game. We can also see on the map the grass type gym that was featured in the actual gameplay trailer. And due to the way that the gym is shaped and due to the way that they featured the types on the outside of the buildings, it looks like we can also make out what is most likely the types of a couple other gyms. If we look around the region, we can also see what looks to be a water gym, a rock or a ground type gym, and possibly a fairy gym. And while the 4 other gyms cannot be seen, they are most likely probably hiding within one of these 3 bigger cities. Speaking of the bigger cities all seem to be self-contained within some type of big wall, which seems a bit odd, so that could possibly play into the story. And even more interestingly, the second big city that sits towards the middle of the region also has what appears to be a huge dragon head at the front of its wall, which obviously could be some type of legendary and very well could factor into the story of the games in some way. There is also an ice mansion to the right of this that looks very important, and some type of wall, cliff, mural thing to the left that definitely looks significant as well. But most notably on this map would have to be what looks to be the capital city at the northernmost point of the region. It definitely looks like this city is based on London, since we can see Big Ben and the London Eye, and it's also just clearly the biggest city in the region, but it's interesting that it's at the very northern end of the region where Scotland is in the real UK, instead of on the very southern end where it actually is in the real world. This is probably just a design choice and doesn't really mean anything too crazy, but it does look like, based on the way the region seems to be vertically traveled from bottom to top, that it's going to be one of the latter areas that you visit in the game, which is a bit unusual for a capital city like this, and it does also look very imposing as well, so it'll be interesting to see if this placement and the city as a whole factors into the plot in some way, shape, or form. And there we have it, everybody. Those were all of the Easter egg secrets and small details that you might have missed that I could find from the reveal of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, while I really looked hard to find everything that I possibly could, I do not consider this to be a definitive list in any way, so if you know of something that I missed in this video, leave it in the comments below. I would certainly love to know, and I'm sure everyone else watching would love to know as well. If you guys enjoyed the video though, be sure to give it a like and let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of these games and what you think of these details, and if you think they could actually mean anything going forward for the final game. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe as well for more Pokemon content and more Pokemon Sword and Shield content. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I plan on covering Sword and Shield as much as I can, so you can expect a lot of videos on it. And with all of that being said, guys, I will be back on Saturday for another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as it goes live. And with all of that being said, until the next one, you know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.